We were just talking about costs of the upgrading, and it was accepted by you that it's cost 12.3 million for a total of 611 homes. I want you to turn, please, to tab 11 of the inspector's documents, the documents that were handed up at the inquiry in April and May. Madam, I have an email from Catherine Reed to Beverly Robinson dated the 14th of April 2015. I wasn't able to establish whether that is what is behind tab 11. But I'm told that this is an email that was handed up at the inquiry in April and May. Do you have that before you, Mr. Kirby?
Yes, I do.
Good. I'm pleased to hear that.
It is tab 11.
It is good, thank you. So, at points 6 and 7 of Ms. Reed's email, it's right to say, isn't it, that as at April 2015, which is the date of the email, the council had spent a total of £46.8 million on the scheme to date, and that includes, if you add up, the revenue expenditure and the capital expenditure.
That's correct, from adding those two figures together.
And do you accept that only 112 homes have been demolished to date on the Aylesbury estate? I don't have the reference for that.
I would need to check the figures. I know we've done Clock 7 and Phase 1A. I don't know how many numbers are involved.
But if I'm right, and it is 112, that expenditure equates to an average of £417,000 per dwelling demolished, doesn't it?
I would trust your maths on this.
And if you take all of the properties on the estate, the figure of 46.8 million, I suggest to you, indicates that the cost of demolition is £75,000 per dwelling. That's 46.8 million divided by 2,700.
If you look under point 7 of that email, it gives a demolition cost to date of 0.9 million. So it's actually more accurate, I believe, to divide the number of units by 0.9 million in terms of cost per demolition per unit. The figure of 31 million applies to acquisitions across the estate, a number of them in the first development site, which aren't related to the properties that have already been demolished. A number of them are elsewhere in later phases on the estate. So if you're looking at the demolition, how much we spent on demolition so far, we've given you the figure in 0.7.
But if you divide 46.8 million by 2,700, the expenditure is staggering, isn't it?
We have spent a lot of money on the estate, and that's partly because of the investment needed on the estate and partly because of the cost of acquiring leasehold interests, and the council has forward funded that work as part of its activity.
And the cost per dwelling that's already been expended exceeds the £50,000 per dwelling that the executive report of Levitt Bernstein stated would be the cost of simple refurbishment.
I'd need to see your detailed calculation and compare and contrast. I think there will be elements within there in terms of things like the acquisitions which aren't actually relevant in terms of the Levitt Bernstein figure. The Levitt Bernstein figure applied to the investment in the property, and acquisitions budget 31 million isn't about investment in property, it's about acquiring the property.
This is in respect of compensation, with reference to the evidence of Ms. Boss, whose statements at the fourth inquiry. Paragraph 10 says confirmation that the compensation offered to leaseholders will be existing market value based on the average of 2 independent valuations plus 10% legal and removal expenses as in the Haygate offer. Leaseholder interest will be brought out at the market rate. Resident leaseholders will also qualify for 10% of the purchase price. Reasonable disturbance expenses will also be paid, and costs of professional fees will also be met by the council. That was the compensation proposal that was before the executive meeting when demolition was decided upon. That hasn't happened, has it?
This point was covered at the inquiry in some detail,
Right.
as far as I remember. So, if the inspector would like us to go back over that point,
No.
I'm happy you responding to it.
Well, then perhaps if I'm told it, are you able to respond briefly as to whether that did happen?
Would the inspector like me to respond to that point?
I think we have lengthy evidence on this and documents submitted in relation to it at the session.
Well, I'll move on. And the only point I wish to make is you haven't changed your policy with regard to 2 independent valuers, and that's not happening, is it?
The position, as explained in the inquiry, just for your assistance as you went at the last inquiry, was that the Annex B, the first part of Annex B, the first paragraph, is what was asked for as part of the consultation. The second paragraph is the council response to that position. So a position under section 10 of saying about 2 independent valuations, that's what leaseholders asked for, and the council didn't agree to that position, has never agreed to that position.
Could I just have a moment? I need to ensure that everything I'm saying in my closing statement I put to you so that you have an opportunity to respond. Sorry, could you clarify your last response again? There's 2 independent valuers. Did you say that is taking place or not?
In terms of 2 independent valuers, no, that isn't our position. Our position is to agree market value. So there is a paragraph in the report which refers to this annex, which explains the context of the annex, and that's never been our position to have 2 independent valuations.
But why is that?
Because it's council policy to go with market value. The option was given to members. Members decided to move on a certain basis.
To conclude then, Mr. Kirby, the position is that the leaseholders haven't been subject to any equalities assessment and are going to be driven from their homes and communities by this scheme. That's right, isn't it?
I don't agree with your assertion.
Could I just have one moment just to check whether there are any more questions I need to ask? I have 2 questions. I'm sorry, I'm just taking instructions as to further questions that the objectors want me to put to you, Mr. Kirby. The first point is that there wasn't ever a ballot of the residents, was there, with regard to the demolition scheme?
The ballot which took place in 2001 was about stock transfer to a newly formed housing association. That's the purpose of a ballot. It wasn't on whether the estate should be demolished or redeveloped or refurbished.
But there wasn't a ballot on that point.
There was a stock transfer ballot.
No, but there wasn't a ballot on demolish or refurbish, was there?
No, because it's inappropriate to hold a ballot for that purpose. It's not seen to be by anybody as good practice or a mechanism to achieve that purpose.
What do you think the residents would think of that?
The residents have been aware of that position since 2001 when the ballot took place on stock transfer. It's the council property and the council will take a decision based upon the views of local residents, which is what we've done for the last 15 years.
What do you think is, and your position is with regard to the ballot, with regard to, in my submission, open and transparent conduct, you don't think it's appropriate to look at the views of the leaseholders when their rights are at stake?
I do think it's appropriate to look at the views of leaseholders. It's appropriate to look at views of leaseholders. It's appropriate to look at views of residents, and that's what the council has done throughout the process.
As far as the human rights of the leaseholders are concerned, and the individuals of the states who are going to be losing their homes, you haven't properly considered those rights at all in the process. There's just been a cursory consideration. Your focus has been on development and financial matters, hasn't it?
I don't agree with your assertion.
You said that there have been no challenges, and the leaseholders were entitled to challenge, but that's what these proceedings are, isn't it?
These proceedings, as far as I'm aware, are fixed in terms of what they are due to cover. These proceedings aren't about whether the estate should be demolished or not. There has been extensive discussion at these proceedings about the wider estate and about a decision taken 10 years ago. I take the view that a lot of those discussions are actually peripheral to moving forward with the first development site.
There's no compelling need for this demolition, is there?
Yes.
And this
Yes, there
demolition,
is a compelling need for the demolition. Just
this
to clarify.
demolition does not promote or improve the social well-being of the estate, does it?
In my evidence, which I'm happy referring back to, the specific paragraphs, I go through the job creation, the social benefits, the environmental benefits of the major regeneration scheme. As part of the DPA, Notting Hill are tied into a whole range of benefits for the estate. Local residents are already benefiting from Notting Hill's involvement through employment schemes.
But there are greater benefits in refurbishment and letting the leaseholders stay in their homes.
As you'd expect, I don't agree with your assumption.
I don't have any